LA Noire allows us to take the place of Cole Phelps and to deconstruct a crime scene to better understand it piece by piece. Using clues that are spread around, we can pick up the pieces to find answers to what happened, to who it happened to, and to why. Wait. I think this is for a different video. I think we can make this work. No matter what the game, when we enter a room we start to deconstruct it. A room at first glance can tell you a lot about what to expect. Especially if it's a boss room, you can pretty much see it from a mile away. After you have a general idea of what the room is meant for, you can then start to pick apart all the details to see what lies hidden below that surface. Like a detective, we as gamers have been programmed to pick up on certain details and understand their significance in relation to a larger story. This type of analysis is something we do hundreds of times throughout a game to better understand what happened before we got there, what might be happening at that moment, and maybe what comes next. These story elements of past, present, and future can be told in a number of ways, but what does it take to effectively tell that story through the environment? There are always easy ways for rooms to tell us stories, such as a total information dump, maybe pages of text on a terminal, or even a voiceover from time to time. In the case of Prey, one tactic out of its arsenal that not everyone might enjoy is the use of an in-game museum or exhibit. For me, it might be the partial nostalgia of wandering through the Museum of Rapture in Bioshock 2, but I always love the idea of going from scene to scene and learning just a touch more about the world itself and how it came to be. It also provided a realism to the people who lived there, who cherish their history and their desire to preserve it enough to make something to remember it by. That alone provides a new level of depth to those who came before you. Prey does something similar to Bioshock 2, however on a slightly smaller scale. Taking up just one room in the main lobby, their miniature museum accomplishes these same aspects of using the environment to create a deeper story for the Talos 1 station. There is, however, a better way to tell story using the environment, and that's by using the objects within the rooms themselves to tell the story. In recent years, we've had an increase in number of objects that a player can see and interact with because of the increase in technology, which has opened up new doors to creating a deeper and stronger narrative through the environment. Creating a story using the environment might sound a little bit daunting. It isn't. Simple stories like a man barricading himself in a bathroom to fend off an impending wave of aliens using trash cans or boxes can reinforce the events of the game. They also provide a gameplay connection to revealing the rest of the narrative. As you become curious to why something's blocked off, it transitions into gameplay, with your ability or inability to move these boxes based on how you developed your character up to that point. But to continue that story, to see what happens next, the player must pick up those boxes, or not if you put all your upgrades into repair skill. These small moments don't take much, but can be extremely useful to provide a greater depth to the world itself. However, if they are used poorly, they can take away greatly from the depth of that world as well. As Harvey Smith and Matthias Worch mentioned in their GDC presentation titled "What Happened Here? Environmental Storytelling," every anonymous story moment wastes the opportunity to say something about the game. If you noticed in the last example, it's not just the environment alone that creates a connection to the player, it's a combination of environment and gameplay both clicking together. In the case of Prey, their large contribution to this connection between environment and gameplay came with the very first enemies we see in the game, the mimics. For those of you who aren't familiar, a mimic has the ability to replicate objects around the environment. Whether it's a light, a chair, a coffee cup, whatever, if you can interact with it, they can probably become it. And since it's introduced early on, it solidifies itself as an ever-present danger to the player throughout the rest of the playthrough. Now there is a thrill and a challenge that comes with not always knowing where they might be lurking if they already are hiding in a room you just entered. Except maybe if they're making the little screeching sounds that they tend to do. Almost like when you're a little kid and you can't stop giggling because you finally found that perfect hiding spot. Or maybe you're lucky enough to catch a glimpse out of the corner of your screen to one transforming into something with their little defining swoosh sound. No matter how it happens, when it happens, the act of playing Where's Waldo with a group of transforming space spiders entices the player to kind of stop what they're doing and really seek and destroy. This merging of gameplay and environment adds a second level on top of the existing deconstruction that already comes with entering a new room with its own story. This entices the player to look closer at the room and the stories that it tells to find the mimics, extra things on tables, things thrown all over the ground, or maybe something that just doesn't feel right will have us deconstructing mini narratives as we search to put a swift bullet or wrench smack into the next thing that moves. There are moments, however, that do more than just connect environment and gameplay, but are able to reinforce one of the most basic premises of the game, that fear of the mimic. Now, there was a room that I think did this best in Prey, and it kept me thinking about it long after I finished the game. It was the, for lack of a better title, not a mimic room. The reason it was stuck with me was because it was able to take a premise that was central to the game, paying attention to the objects in the world, and told a story that reinforced that premise. The story was that of a scientist who was absolutely terrified of the mimics, so in the process of going through that fear, he put sticky notes on every single thing in his office that said "not a mimic" on it, in the hopes that he would notice if one was. Because in the story we have a scientist who was afraid of the mimics, that strengthens our fear and suspicions of the mimics as well. Then in turn, it will reinforce the story of the scientist who is afraid, just like we are, which reinforces our fear of the mimics, and the cycle builds upon itself. Using those object-based stories, the developers can use a technique called telegraphing to show us a look into the future and what we might expect in the game world. Telegraphing, much like foreshadowing, can use the environment to allow us to see what could happen next. Now, this is something you've seen done time and time again, but they're still relevant and of course very effective nonetheless. Blood on the ground, maybe something was killed there, maybe it might hurt me too. A room destroyed, whatever destroyed this room could still be in there. Existing shots from the goo gun showing up on the walls, I wonder what's up there that someone was trying to get to. Telegraphing is one of the most common ways to provide hints at what's to come, and whether you like it or not, it works and is not noticeable as long as it's done with some level of subtlety. There are seemingly more and more tools that developers can use to create these stories through the environments, but in the end, it's up to the developers to use those wisely to create those stories so that we can discover them. And it's on that overarching point that Prey succeeds in the long run, creating that believable environment. Every room that we enter in a game has the potential to tell a story, and it's on the shoulders of the developers to create those stories, but it's on us as the players to decode them. Over the years, as the medium has grown and evolved, we have become detectives of the games we love most, tearing them apart to find what the different puzzle pieces really mean. There's a point where a room can develop a story greater than the sum of the objects in it, and opening a door becomes more than just entering a room. It's entering a story. I want to thank you very much for watching and listening to this series. I had a great time making it. If you're interested in more about environmental storytelling, I would encourage you to check out the presentation I mentioned before by Harvey and Matthias Worch, because it was invaluable to me when I was making this video, and I'll have it linked right below. I want to thank you again. I'm excited for our next Pixel Report, and I have been having a blast writing it. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, do whatever you need to do. But in the end, this has been Devin J, and I can't wait to see you on the next one.